How to choose land for your farm, homestead, or estate. Hey, this is Justin Hitt. I want to share with you a new acquisition we have here at Prosperity Homestead. I'm actually buying this through my real estate investment company, and it is going to be the Hitt Family Farm. I found some agricultural acreage available, and I want to share with you some key factors you must consider when purchasing new land. I'm Justin Hitt from Prosperity Homestead, where we help homeowners and affluent property owners expand their small farm, homestead, or estate, run it more efficiently, and get better results from the concept of an intergenerational family farm. Now, I say intergenerational family farm because really agriculture is the foundation of economy and culture in general. Farms are the backbone of our food system. And when you own a small farm, homestead, or an estate, you have yourself a micro environment of food security, financial security, and safe shelter. These are basics. And when you're choosing land, considering these factors will help you choose land that has highest utility value. So I found a piece of land, and I selected that piece of land for three important factors. The first factor was the acreage necessary to do what we want to do. So we found 24 acres, but I was looking at properties that ranged from 9 acres to 190 acres. And I was looking at the different properties because not all properties are the same. I didn't exclude any acreage. I mainly focused on our budget. Now, our budget ranged from zero, because there are ways to buy land with $0. You can actually lease land, but it ranged all the way up to about $500,000. The people that are putting this together, I was actually looking for other people's properties, and they can also find up to $1 million. It's a service that we offer, is that we'll go look at properties for you in my region and help you determine which land's best. And here's the criteria we use. So the first criteria is enough acreage. To determine enough acreage, you do need to kind of have an idea what you want to do. If it's a market garden, you can actually get started on 2 acres. You don't need a lot of space for a market garden. The second factor we considered was the home sites. So this particular property that I'm buying for my own purposes, I need to have at least one quality home site on it because there's going to be a house that's built. Now, it's not a big house. It's about 1,000 square feet. It's going to be more like a farm manager's house. But it's got to go somewhere where it's easy to get to, where it's going to be dry, and where it'll have good access to the acreage. So a lot of farms, if they centrally locate the house, you can kind of rotate around the house. It just makes it easier to travel if you have this central cluster. So that goes into the house and property design. The third factor is can we expand the property? See, you can get in on a small acreage property that's in the right location, the right zoning, and actually expand it over time to gain wealth by building up land. A lot of times we'll take degraded land. Somebody's passed away. The kids have just pillaged the land, sold the trees off, and left it in horrible condition. We'll come in and we'll improve the land, or we'll consult with people who are improving the land. The key, though, is can we expand it? Right now, with the way the economy is going here in 2021, there's a lot of investment funds buying land, and what tends to be left in the market for consumers is oddly shaped, bad terrain, just land that's undesirable. Again, the reason we're doing this podcast is to help you get better utility value from your land. And so once you understand these skills, you can get degraded land and make it high value and high utility without being a commercial farm. You can still do this using permaculture and holistic methods. So those 3 factors went into choosing a piece of land. I had 50 properties that we were narrowing down, and then we went into a selection process. I'm only going to cover some of the highlights of the selection process because it is very in-depth. When I'm doing a selection process for a client, we're asking about, what are you going to grow? What kind of implements do you have? What's your age? What's your financial situation? What's your value add products? What are your secondary income streams? In my case, my income streams are actually from intellectual property as well as the farm itself. So in this particular property, I'm looking at what's the story I can tell as we transform it from what it is to the farm that we're dreaming about. So we're writing a business plan anyway. How are we going to implement the business plan? What's the story of the business plan? So why would I do that? Well, it's something you'll do anyway when you're choosing the land, because if you're thinking about it, in this particular piece of land, I'm looking at it, and they're going to have my father's going to move on to this piece of property, and he's going to have sheep, and they're going to raise fiber for spinning. They're also going to have a market garden, possibly rabbits, ducks, chickens, that kind of small animal. And as you're telling that story and you're really building out that storyboard, it's the future of your farm, future of your estate, we're kind of saying, okay, well, if we're going to do grazing animals, are we ever going to do cows? If so, we need a different kind of paddock than smaller animals. And if we're going to stick with smaller animals, they cut and eat grass differently than our larger animals. So we might need more intense, smaller paddocks in order to get that cycle of grass growth in place for a regenerative approach. So you're going to now print out that property or the proposed property, and you're going to start thinking about what are going to be wooded areas. My steep land areas need to be wooded. My areas that are broad and clear, if I clear them out and don't have wood buffers on them, I will end up having too much wind. And so your animals can get sick, or you can have too much wind across the top of the property and lose some erosion, lose some soil. I want to look at areas that are potentially going to be wet because they tend to be in the valley, and the land around them tends to bring moisture in that way. So are there any places for ponds? Are there any places for orchards around the homestead? Where is the homestead site going to be located? What are some alternative homestead site locations? What about roads? What about water access? See, all these things layer in on top of the property because you might find the perfect acreage at the right price, and it has a homestead site on it, but you don't want to go buy the property if you can't do what that homestead's intended to do. Now, if you're just self-sufficiency and you want to make sure you have a beautiful view when you wake up and you have your cup of coffee on the porch, and it's a lifestyle purchase, and maybe you're going to have an acre garden for personal use and you're going to have basic small animals, you can get away with any kind of property that has a basic 4 to 5 acre homestead site. So that would be a place to put the house and then your gardens and things around the house, your zone 1 and your zone 2 from a permaculture perspective. But again, all these factors go into choosing your piece of land. Now, there are times you're going to run across a piece of land that's a perfect price. It's like $1,500 an acre, and all the neighboring properties are $8,000 an acre. You might just buy the property to hold it because the property taxes might be cheap. It might give you a place to store something. It might be near enough that if you have the perfect property on the left and you can get the one on the right for cheap, you go ahead and get the one on the right because you might be able to leverage use of the property next door. In the case of farms, you're looking for old estates, you're looking for old farms, and you want to try to get them before the kids break them up. Because you can actually lease a farm. You can lease an ideal space and start farming. Another thing that's really interesting that a lot of folks don't think about is that if you can go, because I got a lot of subscribers that say, look, I want a small farm, I want a little country house, but I'm not thinking about an estate. You keep using examples of Biltmore and Renolda and all these grand estates. Well, I want you to understand that you can scale your grand estate. You can have a tiny house and have that lifestyle of an estate. You just have to you have to unlock your thinking. So there are estates and properties that hire farm managers. So I was looking in Stanton, Virginia for a client at properties, and I found a $1.1 million house. There's the main house, beautiful main house, 8,000 square foot. Okay. And there was a tenant house or a caretaker house. There was 1,100 square feet. The client really liked the 1,100 square foot and they said, look, that'd be ideal. I'd love to farm a piece of land like this, but I don't need that behemoth 8,000 square foot house. And I said, well, but you can afford the land. And they said, yeah, but I'm downsizing. I don't want to afford the land. I just want a farm. I said, but wait a second. That house and that location leases for enough to cover the mortgage. Well, So basically, we ran down the possibility of them living in the caretaker house, them doing the farming that they want to do, but someone else lives in the estate house. Someone else lives in the big house. And there was a little bit of emotional connection there. They were kind of like, I don't really want to be the caretaker. Now, me personally, I would get a kick out of having $1 million mansion, being the owner of the $1 million mansion, and then, shucking and jiving and being like, hey, house master, how you doing? I'm the caretaker, keeping that pretty low profile and enjoying the fact that they're living in my house, paying me money to live in the house. And I live in this little tiny house and I'm getting all these tax breaks because I'm an active investor. And instead of owning the property as an owner and having all the maintenance and expenses, I am utilizing the property and someone else is paying all the bills. Now, of course, in a farm case, the house wouldn't have covered all the farm operations. So the farm operations would still need to be a separate thing. It would have different considerations. But ultimately, you can create a lifestyle for someone else and get the lifestyle you desire. So there's two ways of looking at that. You can actually move in as a tenant farmer on a larger piece of property while you're saving money or searching for the property that's ideal for you. In my case right now, I've got a 2-year commitment with a local nonprofit to manage and to develop their market garden. And I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to find a piece of property for my dad. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to find a piece of property for my needs. So I've started this farm and I'm committed to this farm for 2 years. But I found a piece of property like 10 minutes away from this farm that I'm already working at. I literally have to drive past this property that I found. I have an offer out on it, and I drive past it to get to this other farm. So it's a win-win. This property I found actually has trees on it, so it's probably not going to be accessible or ready to farm in it for a year. And there's no house. So it's basically I'm securing the land in advance that I'll use. My son and I were talking about using it for, go out there and target shoot, go out there and camp, go out there and ride our mountain bikes, put some trails on it while we're getting familiar with the land. But my point being is, while I talk about large estates and how they manage large estates and how you might manage a large estate, doesn't mean you got to go out and buy one. But it is possible that you could own one and profit from it, even though that you don't live in the big house. But there's also the opportunity that even if you don't own land of your own, you can start moving towards this holistic, healthy lifestyle of better food, better enjoyment, better health by working out a synergistic relationship. Now, you don't have to be a tenant farmer like 1950s where you're poor and you're farming because you can't afford land. You can actually be a good steward of the land, even turn it into a service where you're managing 2 or 3 farms in a local vicinity. There are so many opportunities here, folks. The key is to unlock what it means to be prosperous. Do you really need to own the land? Could you own the land in a cooperative? Could you own the land in a family farm where multiple family members come together to buy the farm or investment property? Could you buy it under an investment arrangement where you bought 2 houses next to each other and you live in one house and you rent out the house next door? Meanwhile, you've got the adjoining land to farm or to grow on. The possibilities are endless. And in fact, if you've got any questions about your specific situation, I'm Justin Hitt from Prosperity Homestead. You can visit us at www.prosperityhomestead.org. Ask your questions. Tell me about your dreams and desires as far as your farm, your homestead, your estate. And understand that if you can make land more valuable, if you can make land more useful, if you can stop erosion, if you can stop degradation issues that impact our environment, you're going to be in an ideal situation to have land manifest for you, to have opportunities to work the land come to you, to generate income doing this so that you can do it all the time instead of working full time and being a weekend farmer. You can actually even transform your own home into that oasis that you desire. I'll help you get there with Prosperity Homestead. Thanks for listening. Again, I'm Justin Hitt. You can ask your questions at www.prosperityhomestead.org. And this really has been about is how do you choose a piece of land and what kind of options are available to get the land that you need to get the results that you're looking for, even if you don't own the land, even if you're just starting. Thanks for listening.